All righty, ladies, gentlemen, fellas, welcome into the Super Bowl, the big game, the quote-unquote big game. We're breaking down props. We're breaking down what is going to be your best bets here right now. I got Dylan Sports_Bird with me right now. How are you doing, Mr. Dylan, sir?
I'm good. I mean, I'm sweating out some golf DFS right now, but turns out that the Super Bowl is on Sunday, so I had to get the research going for that last night, and excited to do the show.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. So we got a bunch of stuff going on right now in terms of we got a whole bunch of topics to hit on. We're going to talk about the game in general. We're going to talk about mainly props, like the spots where you can actually find, fun stuff to bet on, not just the spread. I mean, if you want to bet on that, that's fine. But some fun props, whether it's just player props, touchdown scores, all that stuff we're going to get into. We'll talk about it in a second, but we'll also answer questions. So if anything is relative, I see people hopping into the chat right now. So it's live as of now. If you're watching this after the fact, noon on a Friday. So we'll answer any questions that are going to be coming up throughout it that makes sense, and we'll also answer questions at the end of it. So yeah, we're going to be going through this thing right now. I appreciate y'all being here. You want to like, subscribe, do all those things. You can check out Dylan's channel as well. He's been on the channel doing some stuff in the past for player props, so he's well suited for this, but also in the terms of right now with the NBA on his channel, so you can check that out. Some stuff down below. We could talk about the sponsor, Monkey Knife Fight. It just correlates well in terms of props with this show, but we can talk about that in a second. So people coming over from YouTube right now. I think we're streaming to Periscope. I don't know if it automatically is going to shoot out. I don't know. I'll check that on my end right now over to Twitter. But yeah, we'll start basically. I'll just get your thoughts, and then I'll give some of mine on the big game itself right now. Smack some people with some information. What do you think overall? I mean, we can have a quick breakdown, just really a quick thoughts on the feels of this game. If you're leaning spread-wise, over-under-wise, to start there, the high level, then breakdown into some of these props. What are you thinking overall for the Super Bowl? Where are some things that are interesting and appealing that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm leaning Chiefs right now in terms of the spread. I know, like, the one thing that scares me is it always scares me when you got like 85% on a certain side, and that I think is what it was as of a few days ago. Over unders at 56. I don't really have any huge strong opinions on the over under, but I mean, right now my score prediction would be 30 Chiefs 31, Bucs 27. So I guess that would be over by 2 points. So I don't really have any strong opinions on that. And I guess that would cover the spread for the Chiefs by 1. But I find it very hard to bet against the Chiefs. And I think that even though, it's Tom Brady, but I think that the Chiefs are pretty much unstoppable.
Yeah, look, this is the thing. Like I'm not really betting the spread. I haven't bet it yet. We'll talk about alternative spreads, but it's to the point where, I mean, this is probably the one game ever that you should want to stay away from the spread in terms of like how tight that line is. You're basically just flipping a coin. If you like one of the teams, if you just want to have some fun, whatever. But in terms of like making money, it's so tight, the line, that I have no interest in betting it. I would lean the Chiefs as well, but my analysis to that is just you can't stop Patrick Mahomes. And like, if we're talking like scheme wise, what they did last week, the Bucs, was they brought pressure on Rodgers, or 2 weeks ago, and this is what they did earlier in the year against the Packers. They brought pressure and they bracketed Devontae Adams. And some teams have had success with that, and normally you will if there's one weapon on a team. But if you're going to do that against Tyreek Hill, then you can just say, all right, Travis Kelce, go for 150 yards on us in the middle of the field, and hope that none of these other guys like Hardman or Watkins returning or Clyde Edwards-Helaire with 3 weeks of health now back, none of them do anything else after you let Travis Kelce eat. So that's the big deal. Like, you can't put 4 guys, 2 double teaming in the middle of the field, Kelce, and double teaming Tyreek. So when it comes to offense, it would have to be a win in a shootout for Tom Brady. They have the weapons to do it, and that's just why I have no interest right now in the traditional spread, if you will, maybe some alternative spreads. But yeah, I lean the same way. I lean towards the Chiefs. I have no stance on the over-under. I would say, just if you're thinking like game theory strategy-wise, to take the under. If you're thinking fun-wise and you're just trying to have some fun, always take the over. But everybody's going to be taking the over in terms of like the percentage of bets coming in on this thing. So, I mean, that's one spot that if you're trying to make some money, go towards the under. But as always, life's too short to be betting them unders. Not the most fun out there. But yeah, you have any other stances overall? I guess I'm interested in seeing like both wide receivers from each team. Watkins and Antonio Brown likely to come back for this one. Haven't seen Watkins, I think, since week 16. I'm interested in seeing how those guys fit in. They both have had major roles in this offense all season long. And now, whether it's DFS, whether it's player props, it seems like they're both pretty decently underpriced this week.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to get into the players that aren't your Godwins, your Tyreek Hills, your Travis Kelce's, because I think that there's usually like an unsung hero on either one or both teams that maybe just like a second or third receiver on. I mean, in the Bucs case, I mean, they're pretty stacked at receiver, but I think that you will get probably some production elsewhere in terms of Kansas City, because like you said, I mean, the Bucs are not going to let Tyreek Hill go for 269 yards and 3 touchdowns against them. And I think that could end up, benefiting Travis Kelce a lot. So
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think they're going to you can attempt to bracket Tyreek, but the problem is he's in the slot. I think it was 58% of the time this season. So you're not going to be bracketing that. And that's like the thing that really kills him. Like you want to move Tyreek into the slot, Kelsey in the middle of the field into a slot as well. It's just no stopping that, in my opinion. And I think they know that. I think the Bucs know that at this point. It's just a matter of, can they get it done on offense? Can they force a wacky turnover, a punt, something like that? And yeah, sure, maybe they can. So I'm just going to be staying away from the overall spread. We got Ryan Hodge right now. What's going on, Ryan? What's up, Hodge? He says, hammer Tyreek props and eat the wings. Easy game. It might honestly be that easy. If you're talking like Tyreek props, yeah. If you're talking Travis Kelce props, it's basically been that all season long. And today we'll get into it, like bury the lead a little bit. I might be trying to get away from that a little bit for Sunday's Super Bowl. Travis Kelce for the first, like he's hit props. I mean, historic year, he's hitting them like every single week. But we can transition that into basically these first touchdown props, these anytime touchdown scores. First touchdown props are so fun. They rarely hit. I know that. I think in like the 20s, in like the 2022 range, Jordy Nelson, when he wasn't like the star receiver for the Packers a decade ago, there were some people at my house, I'm a Packers fan, that had Jordy Nelson tickets, and it was just so rejoiceful. I remember that moment, and I think I've hit like 0 touchdown scores since then and like 5 attempts. But yeah, where are you leaning early on first touchdown scores? Where are you thinking about the overall odds on the touchdown scores for the first ones?
Yeah, so I think first touchdown score is definitely fun. Now, the way I normally lean on first touchdown score is I usually always take a quarterback to score the first touchdown, because you figure, maybe they get to the 1 yard line, they QB sneak, or you just have a guy like Mahomes where like he could just like scramble and run for 3 yards and score. And there's usually pretty good value there. But I think that my strategy this week is the Chiefs tend to start slow in big games, and they always turn it up at the end. So if we think back to the Super Bowl last year, they were down a lot. Pretty much the whole playoffs last year, they were down a lot, and then they came back at the end. This year, they were, they had that early. They were down like 9-0 against Buffalo, and then kind of turned it up. So I think that I think the Bucs are going to score the first touchdown. So that's the way I'm leaning there. And then I'm thinking, well, what has good value here? Leonard Fournette to score the first touchdown is 10.5 to 1. I think there is value here. He scored 5 touchdowns in the last 3 games. And then I think that I would throw on him, and then also throw on Tom Brady to score the first touchdown at 35 to 1. So basically my thought process there is if they get to the 1 yard line, then you either have the best quarterback sneaker of all time in Tom Brady, possibly getting a 1 yard touchdown. He has 4 rushing touchdowns this season, or you have Leonard Fournette rushing that in if it's not going to be Tom Brady at the 1 yard line. So that's basically what I'm betting on as first touchdown scores.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. On my side, the first touchdown scores are actually it seems like they're not the greatest of odds, and it's because so many of these guys are involved. So you don't have those guys that are running, like even Cameron Brate now, more involved in the playoffs. So the odds on him aren't going to be that great. So you don't get these like plus 34 to 1 odds to win it with some actual like viability of somebody running like 10 routes out there. So I'm looking at it, and this might be like a trend for a lot of my props. I'm looking at, so right now, the first touchdown score, the only guy that I have anything on right now is Sammy Watkins. I got him at 20 to 1 on DraftKings. I saw somebody in the chat asked about where we bet. There's a bunch of different sites. It depends on where legally you can bet. And if you can't bet legally, then, I think PointsBet is allowed everywhere, but a bunch of different sites you can look on. Like Action Network has a dashboard that shows a bunch of different sports books and what the props are, so you can find the best price, but it'll kind of depend on what's illegal in your state. But yeah, I got Sammy Watkins 20 to 1. I think I just tweeted out, I think Sammy Watkins props all across the board are just undervalued right now because he's dealing with this injury, but it's the Super Bowl. They have the entire offseason to get back to health. He's practicing this week. If he's out there, I don't think they're going to play him 15 routes or 20 snaps. I think he's going to have his normal 30 routes run roll. Sammy Watkins is used in the red zone. So like I'm comparing Sammy Watkins 20 to 1 right now in DraftKings Sportsbook. McCole Hardman 17 to 1 for first touchdown prop. McCole Hardman, for the first time in 5 weeks, only ran less than 20 routes. Byron Pringle ran double the amount of routes in their last game, in the championship game, over McCole Hardman. So Robinson looks like he's going to play. If Sammy Watkins isn't going to play, you have Hardman at 17 to 1. That seems a little bit overvalued. Now, sure, you can score from 40, 30 yards out, but so can Sammy Watkins, and Watkins is actually used in the red zone. So I think you're getting some value on the 20 to 1 number. Watkins also runs a lot more routes, I would say, per game than a McCole Hardman. DeMarcus Robinson's in a similar price point in terms of that first touchdown prop, but I'll just take Sammy Watkins more so in the red zone for first. What about anytime touchdown score outside of your first touchdowns? Is there anybody else that you like?
So last week, Championship Sunday, I had Kelce to score a touchdown, which was the easiest thing. I think he scored in 7 of his last 8 games or something like that. He's on some crazy touchdown streak. Unfortunately, they finally adjusted for that. And last time I bet it was minus 125, which I thought was a joke. Now it's at minus 175. I still think that he's going to score in the game, but it's just not as great odds. And then I'm pretty big on Leonard Fournette this game. I think him at plus 120 to score if he is in fact used as the running back, which I don't see how they bounce back to Ronald Jones at this point, just based on the hot hand. I do think Fournette at plus 120 to score anytime is not that bad, but they're really clearly expecting a high scoring game, and with the over under, and they've adjusted all the touchdown score odds for that. I'm mostly going to be leaning towards first touchdown just because there's more value there, and then I'll bet props like yards props or receptions props from there on out. But I'm not huge on any time scorers in this game just because the odds aren't great.
No, yeah, you exactly hit it on the head. I went to go and look. That's why I think first touchdown scores are at least half decent, but even those odds compared to past years aren't great because both these teams have so many active weapons, like we were saying. But when it comes to anytime touchdown scores, like I'm trying to look at them, and they're all like, you get like 2-1 to your money, 3-1. Like you might as well bet an alternative spread that has like not a 50-50 chance, but it seems like a much better chance.
You may as well,
yeah,
you may as well bet a guy to score 2 touchdowns. Like honestly, at that point, like really. Like,
well, that segues perfectly. Like I look at Antonio Brown as, I mean, it's similar narrative in terms of being injured. He's actually played in the Super Bowl his rookie year against the Packers. He was like very little involved with special team stuff. But yeah, Antonio Brown, he's like plus 225 to score a touchdown. That's not great, especially he doesn't have the best red zone role with Gronk on this team and mainly Mike Evans, Godwin as well. But for him to score 2 or more touchdowns, it's plus 1,600. And I can see that happening. So like I'm not betting any of the anytime touchdowns right now. I haven't bet anything on Antonio Brown. I did bet the 2 or more on Brown for plus 1,600, but it was like $5 on that. But I have first touchdown scorer, Sammy Watkins. That's basically it for my touchdown props. There's no like special ones. Like you can pair touchdown props up and things like that. We had a question though that popped up in the chat from Glenn, so I'll pop it up. He said, any chance Mr. Anthony Sherman, so for those that's not familiar, basically the fullback that is not all that often used, I guess you can say, Anthony Sherman, who so far this season, during the regular season, had 3 carries on the ground and he had 1 reception. So he had 4 touches during the regular season. I don't know what the playoff numbers are on him, but any chance to put a small amount on him for anytime touchdown score? Reed and Eric may get creative here. I mean, you can see it, right? Some play action stuff. He's 22-1 though, so that's the issue. What do you say for anytime touchdown score for Mr. Anthony Sherman?
So quick funny background story about this. So Glenn is actually my roommate from college. And we have another friend named Jordan. And I believe it was the 3rd or 4th game this season against the Ravens. Our friend Jordan bet Anthony Sherman to score the first touchdown at 100-1. He ended up scoring the second touchdown of that game. So there's a little bit of background to this, but I actually think like I could completely see them just being creative and throwing Anthony Sherman in there for like some kind of shovel pass or maybe just like a fullback dive that they don't see coming at 22-1. I mean, if you want to just throw a long shot in there, I don't necessarily hate it. We've seen him score before. And I know that, last year in the Super Bowl for the 49ers, people were on Kyle Juszczyk to score, or just in terms of like receiving yards. Now, obviously, he has a bigger role than Anthony Sherman has, but I think it's possible that Sherman could get like a trick play or something like that, or just a play that nobody sees coming because he barely is on the field. But 22-1, I don't hate it if you want a really, really big long shot to score.
Right now, I put the ticket in your hand. I give you a pen. You got to sign it to place that bet for $10 on it. Are you doing it or not?
$10? I mean, I guess I take it.
Well, you got more cannolis than me. I'll tell you that. I'm probably going to pass on that one, but yeah, I mean, you're going to get like maybe 1 touch in the game for him, and it better be the touchdown. And if it is going to be a touch for him, you better be sure it's probably going to be on the goal line. So that's the upside there. Let's go to the props. We can start with quarterback. We'll go to rushing and receiving props, but quarterback props, I mean, there's not going to be much overall. They got like some of the specialty props. Is there anything from Brady or Mahomes that stands out from yards, attempts, completions, anything like that? I got one for each guy, but I'll let you start.
Yeah, so I haven't been huge on passing yards or passing TD props like throughout the entire playoffs almost, just because I feel like it's been hard to read because normally in the playoffs, the defenses are pretty solid. And like, it's not like during the regular season where you could just bet any team playing Jacksonville on like passing yards on receiving yards. So it's a little bit tougher. On DraftKings here, they have like a breakdown. You could bet Mahomes literally like over 0.5 touchdowns, over 1.5, over 2.5. Thing is, like, based on what happened with Rodgers last week, I don't know if Mahomes is going to have like that dominant of a game in terms of stat line. Plus, they've already played him before, so I feel like there'll be a decent game plan, I should say, that'll be adjusted from that first matchup. So Mahomes' yards total is pretty high up. It's 325.5. Now, am I going to really take the under on Mahomes' passing yards? No, like I'm not going to bet the under on probably the best quarterback of all time. He's going to be, at least. I'm going to say that right now. But I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of any of these passing yards props. Brady's is up at 295.5. He had around 280 last week. I actually think that what is interesting here is Brady to throw an interception over 0.5, obviously. It's at minus 177. I think that was a little bit lower, but I think Brady will throw an interception in this game. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Yeah. Right now, where I'm basically going, and it's interesting because we got to see Rodgers the last time against the Tampa Bay Bucs. It was tough. And I mean, playing from behind is going to help you get to those numbers, but that's like the whole point of this, right? Like you have outs in this game. You have two defenses that are fine, but you have just two superior offenses. And if one team's going to get up big, well, that team's going to keep putting it on the pressure on because it's a Super Bowl and you don't want to let that thing slide like Atlanta a couple of years ago. Nobody wants that. And the other team's going to have to throw a lot more. So you have so many outs when you're looking for overs in terms of like total passing yards and things like that. So as much as I want to, and I do think when we get to like running backs and receivers, I'm trying to lean to unders as much as possible. Like I have stuff projected here on my end, but just knowing that overs are going to be just slightly inflated. And if it's not in like the yardage, it's in the juice on it. Like you were saying, like minus 173. So like overs are going to be slightly inflated. So you have to understand like, if there's anybody in here who's not like as new or privy to betting, if you're going to be betting something that's like a minus 110, basically means when you're going to go out there and you're going to bet $110 to win $100, it's minus money, right? It's at that point favored to happen, right? So if something's going to be juiced like minus 170, you have to risk more money to win that $100 back, 170 to win 100 back, right? In profit. So what that happens is you have to start winning more bets long term for it to actually long-term be a profitable strategy for you to be betting on those bets that are more juiced. And a lot of Super Bowl overs are juiced, like to an insane amount right now because everybody's casuals coming in, they're giving the sportsbooks all their money and they want to be betting the over. And a lot of times that'll change the number, but the sportsbooks are saying, we'll just keep the juice here. And once a couple of these bets end up losing, everybody's going to lose, which makes sense. So I'm trying to be really conscious of that and bet unders, but it's tough. Like I have, for my projections right now for the yardage in this game, I have both these quarterbacks over it. I have Mahomes by like almost 20 yards over his. So right now that's enough for me to bet it. I bet Mahomes over 325.5 passing yards. That's per DraftKings Sportsbook. You might be able to find it 324. I saw a Monkey Knife. We'll talk about them in a second. They have it at 333, which is so high, but I even have it over that. Not as much to get all in on it there, but I have Mahomes over the passing yards. Brady's is close enough to where I'm not really touching it, but Brady's, I have a lean on it. I haven't bet it yet, but his completions are 24.5. I have him for 25.8. It's not like that far for me to really want to bet it, but I'm leaning that way right now because for completions, at least, you're not getting a ton of them in a game. It's not like you're getting 100 completions, 300 completions, like you're getting yardage. So that 1 to 1.5 difference is usually enough for me. And also you get to play the caveat that, at least for me, if I think this game's going to get skewed one way, I think it's going to get skewed. The Chiefs are up by a 9-point game in the second quarter, something like that. Brady gets a little bit more pass attempts than you're assuming there, but I'll go with the completions there. So Brady, I haven't bet yet, but it's a lean over 24.5. I have placed on Mahomes over 325.5. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. So first of all, I will say I'm a sucker for overs. I don't bet unders a lot. Unless it's like an incredibly tough matchup. So like, for example, last week I bet under Mike Evans receptions just because he was against Jair Alexander and I felt like that was a lock and it ended up hitting. I've been betting, if you've been watching my videos, I've been betting mostly overs this year. I mean, I don't hate Mahomes over for anything just because I think like he could easily do it. But here's what I'm thinking in terms of the game flow, and here's what I'm thinking in terms of the quarterback. So I think that it's going to start out kind of slow with both teams. Like first quarter, maybe a little bit lower scoring than we expect, because I think that ultimately the goal of the Bucs will be to try and keep the Chiefs offense off the field as much as possible. So they may run a little bit more than you expect at the beginning. Maybe a lot of short completions from Brady that are in the middle of the field. And then I think eventually you'll get the Chiefs probably going ahead. And that's when I think Brady will start throwing a ton. And I always think back to the Super Bowl against the Eagles where Brady threw for it's like the most forgotten, ridiculous Super Bowl performance ever. He threw for 500 yards and multiple TDs and a loss. And I think honestly, if they go down, that same exact thing is probably going to happen again. So yeah. I think that I'm leaning towards Brady's overs if I were to choose a quarterback to go over on.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We got a question that's basically just saying both the quarterbacks, I don't know what the prop is on FanDuel, but we have it on DraftKings. Will they basically combine for their over passing yards? Again, it's like the probably not obvious answer, but the popular answer is the way to go there with the over. But I have it projected to go over in terms of passing yards, and I have it projected to go over by about 30 passing yards right now. So that's enough for me to place a bet on that. I haven't placed a bet on both of them right now, but I also didn't see it on DraftKings yet. So it might be something that I look at. But yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I lean to the over on that. Another question from James, and then we'll get into running backs. He says, Sal, any insight on the line movement? What's up, James? He says, do you think we will get to the Chiefs -3 below -1? So at the beginning of the show, basically, so the juice is -113 on that for people that are new. If you bet $113, you get $100 in profit back, and of course, your money back. But basically what you're seeing is line movement if there's a certain amount of wagers on one side of the game, the books want to, have their leverage and make it so that, okay, everybody's not on this side. So if we lose, we're getting screwed. They balance it out at all times, and they take their money from the juice. That's basically how they make their money in the casinos. And it's basically guaranteed profit for the most part. That's why every single month they're winning millions and millions of dollars or profiting that. And that's why more states are legalizing it, because it's a profitable business. But what you're getting from this is line movement. If it starts to move one way, that's how you know a lot of money is coming in on that side. And you might be seeing that if there's going to be line movement late in the week. Why is that? Who is making that money? Is it large wagers? Is it $1 million wager? Is that normally because, okay, this is a heavy hitter. This is somebody who makes a lot of sense, that they know what they're talking about. I want to follow them. For the Super Bowl, I'm a little bit hesitant on that, because you see guys like, I don't remember the guy's name, with the Astros in the World Series, like the old dude. He actually lives like on the lake where my girlfriend's parents live in Austin, Texas. But I don't know if you remember his name. He was like the sofa guy. He owned like a sofa store. He was betting like millions of dollars a night on this. So like that's going to move the line a decent amount, or at least move the juice on it. And he's just doing it because he's got a ton of money and he likes the team. So with the Super Bowl, it's such a casual thing, even for like people that have a lot of money, that I try and stay away from it. And also, I'm just not really touching the spread in this one. I should point out that earlier I didn't mention it, but I like the alternative spread. I've already bet it on the Chiefs to win by 7 to 12. It's at plus 425 on DraftKings. That's something that I'll take. I don't like any of the traditional 3-point spread right now. It's just not something that I want to touch. It's so lock solid at this point, and it really hasn't moved all that much during the week. It's so lock solid that I think it's just a proper spread. I don't think you can really beat the number long term there. So, all right, that's a good question though. But thank you. So let's move into running backs. So you got some running backs. Yeah, I know that you said a couple things that you like Lenny Fernett. In this year, beginning of the year, I like Fournette over Jones. Like if you're deep into like the fantasy Twitter, like preseason stuff, Twitter, and regular season, it's been a big debate, I think, all season long on which one of these guys is the best one, which one is not washed. I think that they're probably maybe not washed, but I think that they're probably just both average at this point. But we're here now, and we got some running back props. And you got Ronald Jones resurging a little bit in terms of touches, but doing nothing on the ground in the playoffs, coming back from his injury. 2 more weeks to get rested. Opposite for Lenny Fernett. He's getting a ton of targets, getting a ton of usage in the passing game alone, getting there on the ground as well, but getting touchdowns and getting receptions, which is big for player props in terms of his usage for total yardage, big for DFS for point per deck, or PPR point per reception. So what are you looking at running backs early on? I got a couple of bets on the running backs rushing numbers here, and then we can get into receiving for the running backs in a second.
Yeah, so in terms of running backs, I'm kind of afraid to touch the Chiefs running backs right now, just because I mean, I think it's going to be Darrell Williams in the end. Now I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire got some decent run last week, but he wasn't really going anywhere. And Darrell Williams has just been the more consistent guy. We've seen Andy Reid, obviously, with Damian Williams in the past. Damian Williams, unfortunate that he's not here. I love that guy. Always a playoff performer, but he's out this season. He goes with the hot hand, Andy Reid at running back. So I think if I had to choose one that I think will be the guy, it will be Darrell Williams. But you don't really know, because Le'Veon Bell is going to come back. I don't know if I actually think Le'Veon Bell touched the field, but between these guys, who knows what's going to happen with the running backs. Plus, Tampa has the number one running defense in the league in terms of opponent rushing yards per game. They're at, I think it's like something they only allow like 70 something rushing yards per game, which is pretty insane. So I'm not really huge on any Chiefs guys right now, especially because the numbers are 30.5. So it's not like you could bet the under really with that. And it's not like, and I mean, I think Darrell Williams could go over, but I'm not really sure who's going to get the carries. Now, in terms of the Bucs, I like Leonard Fournette. This is definitely one that I'm going to play. I like Leonard Fournette to go over 48.5 rushing yards. So just quickly here, Fournette has gone for 93 rushing yards, 63 rushing yards, and 55 rushing yards. First game of the playoffs, 19 carries, then 17, then 12. Those 3 playoff games so far. And I mentioned, so Chiefs don't have a great running defense. They rank 23rd in run defense, 19th in tackling, and they're 19th in opponent rushing yards per game at 121.9. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that I think that the game will start out slow. And Arians has been, I mean, they run every first down. Like, I know they get made fun of by like the PFF analytics people that they run every first down, but like that's just what they do. I think they're going to try and keep the Chiefs offense off the field. So I think that while he may not get a ton of rushing yards late when they're losing, I think that he'll get enough rushing yards early where he'll end up hitting this prop. Also, I just think he's getting a decent amount of carries, decent amount of touches, and I cannot see them just switching over to Ronald Jones at this point. Like, yeah, obviously could they? Yes, but I mean, I feel like you got to play the guy who helped you get there, and I think that's why I think he's going to go over.
All right, I'll make the case for the under at 40.5 for Mr. Leonard Fournette. So I have a bet placed on the under for Leonard Fournette. So this is good. This is good for the people right now watching live. Also hit the like, subscribe, do those things. Check out Dylan's work as well. Watching live and on the replay right now. So Lenny Fernette, like the guy, he's been playing well. Has he been playing well from a per touch basis? Not in the receiving game, just on the ground. I mean, he's been playing decent. He's averaging like 4 yards per carry in the postseason. Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones averaging like 3.4. But what you're getting very quietly is, yes, when you're looking at these game logs and when you're looking at fantasy points or getting to your props in the receiving game, Fournette's crushing them. He's been fantastic. It's not even close. He has, I believe he's ran 47 routes in the last 2 games to Ronald Jones' 10. Like, Jones is a terrible pass catcher, and I think we know that. And that's why Fournette's been on the field a little bit more, plus Jones coming back from the injury. Okay, but there's a point this season when Ronald Jones was the guy and Leonard Fournette was just getting deemed inactive. Now, maybe it was the high ankle sprain, or maybe it was just they were deeming him inactive and Jones was running off for 90-yard touchdowns at one point. Now, last week, and what you've been seeing is Ronald Jones has had 23 carries since returning. One of those weeks, they said that he was going to be quote-unquote limited. I don't know, based on the numbers, it seemed like that. And Leonard Fournette has had 29 carries. So it's getting close. It's 56 to 44%. In this game, when it comes to like DraftKings projections and stuff, I'm projecting them both to have 10.5 touches. You might say, how do they have a half a touch? It's just splitting that up, right? It doesn't really matter too much. But I'm basically projecting them to have a split workload here. So this is going to be a 2-1, 2 tight end here. So I like Ronald Jones over 8.5 rushing attempts. Again, I got him for 10.5 right now. And then because of that, and the fact that on the ground alone, yes, you can get there and one big run can really help Fournette. But on the ground alone, you haven't seen too much explosiveness from Leonard Fournette this year. He had like the 50-yard touchdown to ice the game earlier on this season. But you haven't seen too much explosiveness, just pure running. And again, 4 yards per carry in the postseason. So if his number of attempts is coming down, I don't think that over-under is showing it too much right now. So I've got it projected for around like 42 rushing yards. So 48.5 is enough for me to take the under on it. So I got Fournette the under. I got Jones because it basically ties in there the over. I don't like Jones. I mean, Jones can have 10 carries for 28 yards, and I really don't care. It's just the amount of volume I think is slowly coming up here. I agree with you on the Chiefs side of it. When it comes to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 30.5 is a nice number. I don't have a bet on it. I have a lean on the over of it, but I don't think I'm going to touch it just because that backfield can definitely still be Williams in there. I don't think Le'Veon Bell sees much usage, but in a Super Bowl, they might give him 2 touches as well. So that's always going to cut into Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who might look better in the passing game. We can get that in a second. But yeah, I do think that people probably don't know how much usage Clyde Edwards-Helaire had last week because he only had 6 carries to Williams having double digit, but he did play more snaps. He played 32 snaps to Williams 30 snaps. He did run more routes by almost double. So he was involved, but that'll probably take more into the receiving game. So I guess the verdict right now, we'll ask the chat. You want the over or under Lenny Fernett? I think it's close, right? It's like a 6-yard difference. So it's enough for me to bet the under, but not bet it with any type of conviction. And all year long, I've never, even dating back to last year, the one time last year in fucking DFS, I faded Ronald Jones. He was like a 25% owned guy, and he has a career high dating back to ever. Not even high school, not even college. He catches 8 passes. He has like 80 yards in the receiving game, something that man never does nothing on the ground. I fade him, and then I'm stuck there with the, for lack of the actual expression, with the pizza on my face, just going like, up. I felt like I got it right, didn't get it right there. So yeah, even with that, I'll still take the over on these attempts with Mr. Ronald Jones. Anything to close the door? We'll see if anybody's in here right now.
Well, I do want to put on the record that I think that Jones is better than Fournette. This is a quick funny thing between my friends. I'm not a Fournette guy at all. Like I don't think he's that good, but ultimately teams do. We see this every year in the playoffs. We're just like a random running back. I'm not saying Fournette's random, but just like a guy that you don't expect will always play well at running back. And the team just always sticks with him because he's the guy that got them there. And I ultimately cannot see them going back to Jones like bigger than they are with Fournette. And now what I will say about the Chiefs thing is I'm just looking here, and Darrell Williams at over 30.5 is plus 110. So honestly, and compared to Clyde, who's minus 112 there at that same number. So if you do want decent value, I think Darrell Williams could get a decent amount of carries still. That's not bad value at all to go over.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So going over to the receiving props now, this is where a lot of my stuff is, just, more receivers, more tight ends. What do you think about receiving? So you got these receivers coming back when it comes to Watkins, when it comes to AB. I think anytime there's an injury during the regular season, they're naturally priced down. I think that's the case even here. I think that they're naturally a little bit priced down based on what I'm projecting out. And again, like I tweeted about this, it's the Super Bowl. So even if these guys are operating, they're not at 50%, they're practicing. Even if they're operating at 75, 80%, a lot of guys are at this point in the season, but they've had a couple of weeks off. And again, it's the Super Bowl. So like, you're going to not let those guys play? No, they're going to motherfucking play in the Super Bowl. So they're going to go out there and they're going to have the whole offseason to rest. So I'm going to project them as if they're getting a full-time role here, which for Brown is 29 routes a game right now at Tampa Bay this year, which for Sammy Watkins is well over. He's ran 35 or more routes in the last 5 games he's played, and their props are coming in pretty low. So that's where I'm honing in on, with some other props I can get into. But where are you looking? Where's like, basically, when you look at these receiving props, where do your eyes go to first?
Yeah, so I want to stick to hold on. So I actually missed a prop with the running back, but it's for receiving. So this is one that I just want to mention. I don't think I'm going to bet it because it's horrible value, but if it happens to come down towards better value, then I would consider it. Leonard Fournette over 3.5 receptions. He's currently at minus 167. Again, horrible value, but I think it's going to hit. He's had 4 receptions, 5 receptions, and 5 receptions the last 3 weeks. He's had at least 4 targets in in each week, 7 and 6 the last 2 weeks. So I think that with the targets, he's going to hit that. There's a reason it's at minus 167. But if for some reason that value does go down a little, get a little bit better, I'd consider it. Just wanted to touch on that quick, just since we're going back to Fournette. But if we want to start with the Bucs here, I'm definitely looking at Godwin. I saw on FanDuel he's still at over 73.5 receiving yards. Look, I'll always back Godwin just because he's a Penn State guy, and he's really, really good. But truthfully here, Evans, ever since the regular season ended and they were like, all right, we don't need to get Mike Evans' record anymore. They've been like going really hard back to Godwin again. I think there's going to be a lot of passes kind of in the middle of the field. Like Godwin is like Brady's, and this was something that people spoke about before the season even started. Godwin is like Brady's like ideal receiver. Like he's just like slot guy, perfect in terms of route running, great hands. I know he's been dropping a decent amount of passes lately. That's extremely unlike him. Godwin's cleared this over 73.5 receiving yards number in 8 out of 15 games this season, but 4 of his last 5, most importantly. He had 8 for 97 against the Chiefs when they played in week 12. Pro Football Focus has him as a 47% matchup advantage against L'Jarius Sneed. And look, I think that ultimately in this game, the Chiefs are going to be leading, and even if it's padded in the second half at the end of the game, I think Brady's going to have to throw a lot, and I think Godwin is going to be that guy.
Yeah, so I'll take the other side on that. So I have the under right now on Godwin, and it's one of these where I kind of like touched on it earlier that I'm taking the under on some of these bets just because I think the number's a little bit higher than it should be, and trying to hope that 1 or 2 of these bets hits, and then you're fine. So again, like a lot of stuff is going to be pushed towards the over for the Super Bowl in terms of just that number in general. So I think Godwin's proper number should probably be somewhere around like 74, and that might seem like it's a small difference, but for me, it's enough to want to bet it. It's just on the edge of enough to want to bet it. Maybe 72 yards. He has a good matchup. He's going to face Snead. Snead's been good this year. He kind of took over around midway to the end of that season. But if you're talking like matchup advantage, positive 47% according to Pro Football Focus, you're going to have Godwin in the slot. Now, the thing that does make me feel a little bit better is now last week he ended up having, I think, 5 receptions, got him to 110. He had the one big play. But in general, he needs to see targets. He probably needs to see 7 or 8 targets to get you there. And that's a healthy amount of targets, right? So the ball can be spread out, especially with Antonio Brown coming back, especially with Cameron Brate seeing a little bit of a resurgence in the postseason. So Godwin only averaging, I think he's right now averaging like 12.8 yards per reception. He's outside right around the top 50 in the NFL, but for his stature, you would think it would be a little bit higher. So he's not being targeted as much downfield like a Mike Evans, like an Antonio Brown, even though Brady's throwing downfield a lot. So that's just kind of the analysis that makes me feel better about backing up my own bet on the under. But yeah, I mean, a Penn State person, somebody who loves Godwin, big game in that Rose Bowl. It feels gross, but I'm going to take the under just in terms of value. I'll go down into a couple other people here. So I already touched on some of those wide receivers that I like. I have bets placed in them. I'm big on these guys, AB and Watkins, whether it's DFS, their prices are too low, and DFS comes from the sports books. A lot of the time, their prices are trying to take into account player props and really just in lines and stuff like that. So AB, I have the over 40.5 yards. I feel fine about that one, but the one I really like is Watkins over 36.5. Watkins is going to go out there, and I'm projecting him to be fully healthy. I have him running in this game 32 routes. I feel good about that. You're getting 32 routes out of him. His target rate's probably going to project him out to see somewhere between 5, 7, call it 6 targets in this game. So at 36.5, a decent yards per reception number. I like Watkins on the over at 36.5, AB on over 40.5, Godwin with the under. And then right now, those are the only, I have Tyreek under 7.5 receptions, but the juice is so big, that's a lean on it. So if the juice stays, it's minus 143. If it stays at that right now, I'm going to avoid it. I have a couple others, but I'll see if you got anything else.
Yeah, so right now I have Antonio Brown over 40.5 on my maybe. And I probably will end up taking it.
Slap it down right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I had it down as a maybe or question mark just because I think that's a ridiculous number for Antonio Brown. I literally I texted my brother and I was like, what are we in 2012 here? Like that is a ridiculous number for Antonio Brown.
This is a guy who for most, so I mean, people forget like he wasn't there to start the season. NFL season is a very long time. He comes in like midway through the season and he's looking decent midway through the season. You're going to still have to get some rust off of you. Then he ends up getting hurt, right? He gets a little bit of a setback and then he starts to play hot again and he starts to get targeted downfield, ends the year with 138 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? And that was basically the last time we saw him. In the postseason, he got nicked up, and now you're going to get him here. And it seems like this number is taking into account injuries. It's obviously taking into account an offense that's got a lot of guys on it, but that's the first thing I thought too. And Antonio Brown gets there on 1 reception sometimes. So like if he doesn't have anything going in the second, third quarter, you could still feel confident that 40.5 is an over for Antonio Brown downfield. I completely agree. He could get this in 1 reception. So, I mean, for a guy who's definitely a threat to score a long touchdown, a guy who, I mean, if for whatever reason, let's say they just happen to be covering Godwin really well, then like Antonio Brown could even see like 5 or 6 receptions in this game. And I mean, that's going to be an easy over for him for both receptions and receiving yards. I think the receptions line is down at like 3.5
which I feel like is also still pretty crazy. Let me see what the minus 118. Yeah. So I don't mind that also. I'd probably lean towards receiving yards just because the fact that he could get that in one play. Yeah, I'm pretty big on Antonio Brown. And then I have a question mark next to Tyreek Hill over 92.5 receiving. So the thing with that is it's a really high number, so I hesitate. Last week I took it I took it anyway, and it worked out. And the thing is, he hasn't gone over 92.5 as much as you would think this season. He's just been like an absolute touchdown machine. And then occasionally he'll have like his games where he explodes. And one of those was against the Bucs, obviously, where he had like 13 for 269 and 3 touchdowns. My only hesitation is that, like I said, I feel like that their game plan is going to be just not letting him do that again. And like, they're going to be so focused on him that maybe Kelsey goes off, or like you said, like Sammy Watkins goes off. I don't have the Sammy Watkins over bet written down, but I think that it is something that I could be leaning towards as well. So I do have a Tyreek Hill as a question mark on the over, just because 1, betting him is fun. 2, I think that he legitimately still could hit that over, especially with a guy who could get 60 in one play. So yeah, currently that's a question mark right now. I'm leaning over if I had to guess, but don't know if I'm going to bet it yet. I'm probably leaning towards taking Brown a lot more than Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I'm with that too. Right now, Tyreek, I'm not against it. I'm not like on the under. I just think it's a no bet where he's at. I kind of feel the same way. I think Kelsey's at 100 over under. Like these are kind of no bets for me at this point. They're numbers that I think these guys can get to, but it's just not enough that I think we're getting any type of value on it. The other one that I like a lot, and so somebody asked, I think in the chat, who was it? Jay Wolin. He asks, what are your top 3 lock of the day bets for the Super Bowl? We actually have best bets we're going to say at the end of it, so probably in like 20 minutes or so. But one of them that got really close for me for a best bet, but I stayed away from it because this guy can get there on his one target. But Scotty Miller on DraftKings has an over-under yardage prop of 20.5. Last week, Scotty Miller, yes, he had the big touchdown at the end of the game, or at the end of the first half on a blown coverage. That's the only thing he did in that game. He had 2 catches, 3 targets, but all the yardage came on that touchdown. Scotty Miller, even with Antonio Brown out last week, now Brown returning, even with him out last week, and with Gronk having somewhat of a limited role in the passing game, like 20 routes run, that could also come up in the Super Bowl, your last game maybe ever for Gronk. So he has a prop of 20.5. Last week, he only runs 20 routes, and that's with no Antonio Brown out there. So you had Tyler Johnson, a rookie, run 11 routes last week. Not a 50-50 role with the two of them, but 33% of the snaps this rookie's taking over in a conference championship game. And now Antonio Brown's back, who was running 29 routes a game during the regular season. So Scotty Miller, I mean, I think that Scotty Miller is probably going to come out there. And if you want to just look at what he was doing to close out the year in the regular season, he was having 6 routes run, 8 routes run, 4 routes run, 9 routes run, 13. So I think he's going to run like 8 routes, 10 routes in this game. So he can get there on that 1 reception. That's why it's not a best bet for me, but I do have the under right now, 20.5 yards on Mr. Scotty Miller. And I did take the over. There's some juice on it, but it's only minus 124. Over 15.5 yards for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He ran 19 routes last week. He played more snaps. And now he has 2 more weeks to get healthy. When he was healthier earlier this season, and I know Williams has been a solid back for them, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a more talented back, definitely in the receiving game than Williams, and I think that's something that they're going to prioritize in this game. I don't think either team's going to run all that much like we've seen all season long out of both these teams. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire for over 15.5 receptions. Again, it's a number that, or 15.5 receiving yards. It's a number that I don't care if he has only 1 reception, he can still get me there on that. So that's basically where my over-under for receiving. So I'll wrap it up with Godwin under 77.5, AB over 40.5, Watkins over 36.5, Clyde over 15.5, under for Scotty Miller 20.5. I have under Kelsey 8.5 receptions and under Tyreek 7.5 receptions.
So are we doing tight ends right now, or are we doing that next?
Yeah, you could throw the tight ends in there.
All right, well,
either
I
anything
think,
for them.
So I don't know if it went up since I did it. Yeah, right now Kelsey is at 94.5 receiving yards, minus 141. So not great. Maybe if it moves up to like 95.5, then maybe it'll be a little bit better value. But the Bucs, they aren't great at guarding the tight ends. Like I bet Tanyan's overs last week and they hit. Just because they aren't great guarding the tight end. Kelsey's a machine. He's cleared this 94.5 number in 8 of his last 10 games. He's had over 100 receiving yards in 7 of his last 10 games. 69% matchup advantage over Devin White. Nice. I think that the Bucs may overplay Tyreek Hill, like I said, and as a result, I think Kelsey may go off. He had 8 for 82 against the Bucs in that last matchup. I think he has a bit bigger day here. So I mean, it's going to depend on the juice, but I could be leaning towards Kelsey over receiving yards as well. I saw on DraftKings his receptions went up to like 8.5. If it was 7.5, I think I would go for it. But if it's 8.5, that seems like a little bit too high. Obviously, you could hit it, but I think that's a little bit too high. Now, so I guess just like you did, like I'll read off my receiving props here. So I'm disagreeing with Sal and going with Godwin over either 73.5 receiving yards. I know it's a big difference between FanDuel and DraftKings. FanDuel has 73.5. DraftKings has 77.5. I think that wherever I get it, I'm going to go over with him. Kelsey over 94.5 receiving yards. And then my question marks are Tyreek Hill over 92.5 receiving, Antonio Brown over 40.5. I'm heavily leaning towards at this point. And then I think that I may hop on Watkins as well, over 36.5.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we had a question earlier, so I mean, I don't know if this guy's still in here, but somebody will see the answer. He asked, and this is a good time to put it up, McCole Hardman over 28.5 receiving yards. So I'll give kind of my 2 cents on it, and then you can. It's going to be a no bet for me. I'm not taking the under either here. But the problem with McCole Hardman is Robinson didn't play last week, and they said we're going to be giving, I don't know why Siri thought McCole Hardman was Siri's name, but Robinson didn't play last week. And obviously, Sammy Watkins didn't play. And McCole Hardman, for the first time, kind of got dropped in the pecking order. And Byron Pringle ran 31 routes. McCole Hardman only 16. Now Robinson, I know he's in the COVID protocol, but I think tomorrow or today is when he's expected to come out.
I think he's cleared, yeah.
He's already cleared, yeah. So he's going to be back. Sammy Watkins looks to be trending back. I'm sure we'll get an official statement probably today on final practices. So, yeah, with those two guys back, I don't really see any upside from McCole Hardman. The reason I'm not betting the under, and it's just a no bet for me, is if McCole Hardman runs 10 routes, he can still get you this number on one target, but I don't think it's that likely. He's not the same type of player that he was, let's just say, in their first playoff game.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards no bet here also. I think that if he has a big play, it could, like last week he had a 50-yard rush, but like obviously that doesn't count for receiving yards, and he just used in such a different he's used in just like a million ways. So I think that and he's inconsistent with his production, like extremely inconsistent. Like he'll have those huge games and then he'll have games where he puts up like no yards. So for me, it's a no bet either way. Now, one more prop that we did not go over and we kind of skipped over that I want to get your thoughts on here. So I was looking at the rushing yards props, and I know we spoke about this already, but Patrick Mahomes is currently over 19.5 rushing yards. It's at minus 155. So yeah, not great value. But again, if he moves up to 20.5, then it could go down to possibly better value. Mahomes, I feel like I read something that said his toe is close to 100%. I don't know if he's just saying that or if it's actually legit. I think that if he does feel healthy with his toe, then I think that he's going to hit this 19.5. Bucks have Bucks have a 32% pressure rate, and Chiefs have a minus 20% pass blocking advantage. So if he's under the same kind of pressure that Rodgers was last week, I think there'll be a lot of opportunities for him to scramble out of the pocket and get some rushing yards. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I actually haven't projected for the over, but it's not enough for me to bet it. It's at I have him for 21 and change rushing yards, so it's too close for me to bet it. But there's a couple things to this. I don't think that his toe is healthy, but I also don't think that it matters. Obviously, he's not going to say, my toe still hurts, because then they're gonna kind of know what to be doing from a defensive standpoint. So you don't have basically turf toe, and he's not a receiver, he's not a running back. He doesn't have to push off as much, or at least run and cut as much on his foot. But you don't have turf toe, and you're just back to normal in 2.5 weeks. That thing, for more times than not, it'll last for most guys the entire season. But what they do is they get pain management for it. And in the Super Bowl, when guys are running after you and you have adrenaline spike in, yeah, you could probably run for 10 yards. Now, what happens after that? Maybe you're banged up once the adrenaline runs off. But I don't think that it's going to be that much of a factor for this rushing prop. It might be a factor for the whole game for his chances of having 50 yards on the ground and running more often than he usually does, being a little bit more timid from that standpoint. But I do think it's going to hurt him. I don't think it's going to matter for the prop, but it's too close for me still at that standpoint. I have the lean on the over based on the projection, but it's probably something that I'll stay away from. And I'll roll into that because some of the Mahomes props will be something that we talk about for Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight's going to sponsor this stream. What there is a player prop shop. If you don't already know, they have a bunch of different types of games over there as well. So you can check out Monkey Knife Fight. And if you want to sign up, if you're signing up, you want to just put $10 Rooskies in. They'll match you if you use the code VETRI, just my last name, VETRI. They'll match you up to $50. You want to put $50 in and play a bunch of games for the Super Bowl? I'm going to be doing that. They'll give you $100 into your account. So there's a couple of props on Monkey Knife Fight right now, and I'll focus in on the fantasy points. I do fantasy point projections. The first one, and they have a bunch of different props you can do for this guy versus this guy. These three guys are going to score a touchdown, the touchdown dance game. They have some other ones that are not just fantasy points based. They have your normal over-unders for yardage. The yardage for the quarterbacks is massively high, but it's probably something that I'll stay away from. But for fantasy points, there's a couple of props in there. So you have to pick these two. You have to pick between two players. You have to get both of them right to have to win the bet, and you win basically a plus 250 bet. So Kelsey under 23.5 points is what I have, and I have over Evans 14.5 is what I chose. The other one for fantasy points is the quarterbacks, and it's a little bit closer. I have Mahomes over 26.5, and then there's Brady under 22.5. But that Brady part is the one that I don't like. You have to pick the bet, though. You have to pick one side of it. I have Brady for basically 22.5 fantasy points in this game. So I just took the under on that side of it to not just take all overs. So that's where I'm at on those. Do you have anything on that? I don't know if you looked at Monkey Knife Fight yet, but basically I've already locked in Kelsey under 23.5 points. I think he gets close, and I have Evans over 14.5.
Yeah, so I'm looking at, I don't have Monkey Knife Fight up right now, but I'm looking at fantasy point props. And I think I'm leaning towards Brady over 22.5 points just because I think just game flow leads towards that. Like I said, it may start off slow, but I think ultimately there's going to be a ton of either garbage time, or I don't even want to call it garbage time. It'll just be like an attempt to catch up. And so I like that. Again, Fournette's prop at 14.5 is decently high, but if he catches 4 or 5 passes like I expect in PPR, then I think that if he catches 4 or 5 passes, scores a touchdown, then that's what they're projecting for. But I do like Fournette in this game as well. And then so those guys are what I would say for the Bucs. And then in terms of the Chiefs, I'm not huge on any of them just because Hill and Kelsey are jacked up a little bit. But if I had to choose, I would probably go with Kelsey. I would probably fade what you're doing and go Kelsey over just because I think he's going to go off.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And that's the thing for me, like Kelsey. So I'll just close it up with Monkey Knife Fight. They just sold, like, it's an incredible company in terms of, like, I'm in one of their Slack channels right now. We talk pretty often. They're a bunch of great group of just ladies and gentlemen and a bunch of the fellas in there, but they're awesome. So check them out if you want to be playing somewhere for props. We had a couple people in this ask us where we play props. You should honestly, like, the transparent answer is you should be looking at Action Network. You could just look at the sports betting charts for NFL and it'll show you all the sports book. Pick the one that the number looks the best to you. Pick the one that the juice or the vig or the price, whatever you want to call it, looks the best to you. But if you want to play and get a little bit of deposit bonus, Monkey Knife Fight up to $50 will match you 100%. Again, it's linked down below, but my last name, Vetri, Vetri, will let you get that bonus there. So yeah, Kelsey is interesting for me because, man, like, I think what you do here, like, based on what Tyreek did to this team last time when they tried to go one-on-one with, there was no, in that game, I believe there was no Jamel Dean, but who's been good this year for them. But there was Carlton Davis in that game, and he just got left and right torch. Right? They try and put some safety help. It doesn't matter.
Carlton Davis, I don't have the stat. Oh no, maybe I have the stat written down in the game notes here, but he was shadowed by, here it is. He was shadowed by Carlton Davis week 12 on 41.7% of the routes and 8 for 204 and 3 touchdowns is what Tyreek Hill did in those routes.
Yeah, that's insane. And now you have Jamel Dean back, which is great. And like we said earlier, if they want to say, okay, we're not letting Tyreek Hill beat us because he can easily torch this guy again, then we're going to bracket him. If you bracket Tyreek Hill, you're inviting Travis Kelce to have a 8 to 10 to 12 catch game and do whatever he wants in the yardage. So that's like the scary part for me, taking the Travis Kelce unders, for taking the unders on the Monkey Knife Fight side. I'm just hoping that there's a different game plan in there that's like, let Travis Kelce get 150 yards and maybe we can still win in that regard. But it's going to be tough. You can't take away both of these guys. And honestly, you probably can't take away either of them. You just have to try and contain them. But we had a question in here. So for the people looking for places to bet, DraftKings, FanDuel, these sportsbooks, PointsBet, MGM, wherever you're living, but Monkey Knife Fight if you want to check them out as well for player props. Luis asks, and this is a good question, what does it mean when you say that the bet has juice? So basically, when you're going to bet on a line, so like right now I have the sportsbook up. So for a prop right here, so over the number we were talking about earlier, McCole Hardman 28.5, the question that we had on that, neither of us wanted to bet it, but if you bet the over, it's minus 121. If you bet the under, it's minus 103. That right there, that minus is basically the price. It's what you have to pay. So if it's minus 121, if you bet $121, you will get back $100, right? So that's the price, but it's also described as the VIG is like the betting guy's term. The juice is just kind of like a slang term, but it basically just means the price of the bet that you're paying. But that's a good question. There's a lot of the times, like, especially for the Super Bowl, sports betting becoming much bigger. Any questions that you have at all, just on the general basics of sports betting, line movement, whatever it might be, just feel free to ask. Don't feel like, this is like too much for me. Like, just feel free to ask and we can help you out. A lot of people are brand new to sports betting and maybe dipping your toe in for the first time, but I think that's a good spot. We can slide into, I have no team bets right now. I don't know if you have any team bets, like specifically like this team is going to have this many touchdowns, field goals, anything like that.
Yeah. So I actually have, and I haven't looked at, I don't even know if they have these during the regular season, but I was looking at 2 defensive props that I think are interesting. So I may play both of these just because I think that at least one of the guys hits it, and if one of the guys hits it based on the fact that these are plus 120, all it needs is one for you to go up money, and I think both could honestly hit it. So Shaq Barrett and JPP over 0.5 sacks, both are plus 120 on DraftKings. My sole reasoning for this is that Eric Fisher, the left tackle, is out. I think they're going to blitz. I think that they're going to do what they did to Rodgers last week. And the Packers they were second ranked in pass blocking on Pro Football Focus. So they had a really, really good offensive line. Like if you watch the Packers all year, Rodgers had hours to dance around in the pocket. He had basically nothing last week. So I think they're going to attack the O-line with Fisher out. Barrett had 3 sacks last week against the Packers. has like I think 11 between the postseason and regular season combined. JPP's also been playing really well lately. So 32% pressure rate for Tampa, minus 20% pass blocking advantage for KC. I think both those guys could possibly get sacks in this game. And again, if one of them hits, you go up money because it's plus 120.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's only basically one team, like the Bears a little bit at times, but there's only one team that got pressure on the Packers this year, and it was the Bucs earlier in the season. And David Bakhtiari, people forget, the highest paid left tackle, highest paid offensive lineman of all time, he got hurt in that game like early on, and then they just brought pressure nonstop. Like he got hurt when they were up 10-0, and then everything fell apart after that. Rodgers threw a pick 6 against pressure. So then what you got in the postseason was Bakhtiari tore his ACL, and they just brought pressure the exact same way and got there. I say that because, yeah, now that you have no Eric Fisher on that side of the line, and that's going to be somewhat of an issue as well. So I think that protection could be an issue. The one thing, though, and you saw it last week with for the Packers with MVS getting there deep down the field a couple of times, the one thing with bringing pressure, as always, is you better get there, or you better get there quick enough to make the guy throw it away. And Patrick Mahomes, he's not scared to stay in the pocket. So that's the one thing that concerns me in terms of, I kind of hope that they bring some pressure. Like maybe the mobility on Mahomes is going to be somewhat of an issue, but that just opens stuff up downfield for scoring, for any types of props on some of these guys. So yeah, I don't have any team props on my end, but I think that the pressure makes a lot of sense, especially with having a replacement offensive lineman in the game. If you want to get to MVP props, so this is what we're going to do, right? I'll pull up Dave Laufey's tweet. So I'm not currently doing any shows with Awesemo, but probably once baseball starts, I'll do some. But I did a lot of shows with Awesemo. It's another site that covers some sports. And Dave Laufey was one of the guys there. He's fantastic. He's great. He's one of the hosts there. And I did a lot of shows with Dave Laufey. It's Laufey_D on Twitter. He put this tweet out, which was very good to see. Since 2000, these are the MVP winners. Since 2000, 13 quarterbacks, 4 receivers, 2 linebackers, 2 cornerbacks, 0 running backs. That is it since 2000. So, I mean, since this is going to skew with Brady and Mahomes, and something would have to go really wrong for one of them to win and not be the MVP in this, one of them has to get hurt, potentially just not play at all, like in that Brady Super Bowl against the Rams. Nothing goes on at all. In this one, it seems like highly unlikely. But we're going to get away from quarterbacks since they've won 13 out of, I think, like the last 21. Or 13 out of the last 21. So we'll get away from that. So non-quarterback MVP options. If you can't pick the quarterbacks, who are you going with? Why are you going with them? Is it going to win the Dollarooski? Should the people in the chat take your word as gospel and put the mortgage on this bet?
Yeah. So first, I do want to mention something with Mahomes and Brady here. So one of my friends texted something in our group chat that was pretty interesting this week, and it really made me think about it. So if you're looking at the line on the game, if you want to take the Chiefs money line, it's minus 159. But you could get Mahomes' MVP prop at minus 106. So if you're not huge on taking Chiefs money, like I think my friend made a great point. Like if you're not huge on taking the Chiefs money line at minus 159, maybe just bet Patrick Mahomes to win MVP, because in all likelihood, I cannot see a scenario where the Chiefs win, but Mahomes doesn't get MVP. That being said,
he'd have to get hurt. He'd have to get hurt at this point.
Yeah, like I mean, like I feel like if Kelsey could have a huge game, but if Kelsey has a huge game, so are Mahomes' numbers are also going to be insane. So, well, I feel like Kelsey at 13-1 here to win MVP. He's the guy that I've said I think is going to go off in this game. He could score 2 touchdowns and have 100 yards, but Mahomes is probably still going to get MVP over him because he's the one passing. So that's why it's tough there. It's not like the only way I could see Kelsey or Hale getting MVP is it would have to be like a decent Mahomes game where maybe he puts up in the 200s in yards, right? And then like maybe end of the late fourth quarter, like Tyreek Hill breaks an 80-yard touchdown off of like some insane play, and you're like, all right, MVP. Or same thing with Kelsey. He has like a really long catch or touchdown, and then you know what, MVP. So yeah, I think that if I were to pick a guy that's not Mahomes, it would be Kelsey on the Chiefs. Now in terms of the Bucs, it's tough because again, I think Brady will get it, but I'm big on Godwin. I'm big on. I mean, if you wanted to take it, I'm curious if you wanted to take a defensive player, what would you do here? Yeah,
I mean, I might just take a defensive player. I think it's like 9 or 10-1, just any defensive player to win it. I might just take that and group them all together because it's just so hard to pick one of these guys. Right. And it's not even like one position is reigning supreme. Like you've had, like we said, since 2000, 2 cornerbacks, 2 linebackers. That's it on the defensive side. And it's weird stuff, right? What was his name? Like Malcolm Smith or whoever it was has that like pick 6, weird, and like a fumble recovery, a sack. Just a weird stuff has to go on there. So it's not something that I have interest in unless you're just going to take the entire defense and just say, all right, 10-1, 9-1. That's not bad. I'm not taking that right now. I currently have one MVP bet in, and I actually think it's really smart what your friend said and what you just translated in terms of like Mahomes minus 106. You might even get to find Mahomes like plus 100 somewhere on a sports book and just take Mahomes at that point if you don't want to be touching the line. I'd rather take Mahomes and touch the line. Like I said, I'm not touching the line today. But Yeah, but here's some of the things that, like last year, Patrick Mahomes, they just want to give these quarterbacks the MVPs. It's just like the regular season. They want to give it to them. The culture that we have in terms of promoting quarterbacks, as you should for a football team, it just gives them such an easy chance. You had Brady in the Super Bowl with James White doing everything he possibly could to win MVP, doesn't get it. You had Patrick Mahomes last year throwing for just 200, and there's a narrative of him coming from behind and winning the game, of course, but 286 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game in the air, and he gets MVP pretty convincingly. So it's going to be really tough. So that's why we're trying to have a little bit of fun with it. If you want to look at the recent quarterback or wide receivers that have won it, 10 for 143 from Edelman in a game that had no points in it at all the year before that. You want to go back still all the way back, you'd have to go to Santonio Holmes in that Pittsburgh game, 9 for 131 and a touchdown. So you're probably going to have like an 8-catch, around 150-yard game, and likely get in the end zone if there's a decent amount of touchdowns, which is possible for a lot of the receivers in this game. So that leads me into the 60-1 bet that I have right now on him. And there's a couple of avenues to this that might really hurt him outside of him being 60-1, but I'll go Antonio Brown. I think you need to have juice. So we've seen Brady have Edelman win it in a low-scoring game. We've seen Deion Branch a long time ago win it. So it's not like Brady wins it every single year, almost every single year, but you've had these other receivers win it for a Brady team. But you need to have juice. You need to be a guy that can actually get to these 130 yards. When Deion Branch won it, he had 133 yards. Like I said, Edelman had 141 yards. They had these big games. Well, we just saw a month ago, this guy still got juice. Edelman or Antonio Brown's old. He might be getting close to washed, but he still got juice. 138 yards a month ago, 2 touchdowns to close out the regular season, had a massive game. I think that if you're getting value, I don't think it's likely 60-1, but I think Antonio Brown should be closer to 45, 50-1. And if you're going to get that 60-1 number on it, again, I'm not betting $1,000 on this. You want to be putting down somewhere between 10, 20, $50 on it. That's a pretty massive payout for 60-1. And also it's a fun prop at this point. I'm not like sitting here saying like, this is going to be the one that hits it, right? It's 60-1 number. I think there's value in the number. The one thing that a friend told me before I came on live here that actually probably hurts a little bit is just Antonio Brown, the character of Antonio Brown, and the narrative of Antonio Brown being the Super Bowl MVP after everything that's gone around. Because if you don't think that that's something that Roger Goodell and the football gods above have somewhat of control over, if it's a close call between the winning team, a close call between Tom Brady and Antonio Brown, they're the ones that clearly had the 2 best games. It's going to be tough for Brown to get it. He's going to basically have to show out for 150 yards, 1 to 2 touchdowns in this game. But Antonio Brown 60-1, I think there's value on that. His public narrative and a lot of things that he's brought upon himself might harm him a little bit more, but maybe that's built into the line. What do you think about that? What do you think about overall MVP odds?
So yeah, I'm not sure if you saw yesterday, but Goodell was saying like something like, "Oh, Brady," like he literally had a quote yesterday. I was like, "Oh, Brady's like the greatest player ever to play in the NFL." And I think if he wins, if the Brady wins, I cannot see any way that Brady doesn't get it again, unless it's some kind of low scoring fluke game with Devin White getting a pick 6 or something like that. And my other just the way I want to bring up one other possibility, and it's extremely slim. But when talking about wide receivers here, so this is a quick fun fact, and I just was looking this up recently. So in the 90s, I don't know what year it was, but Desmond Howard, he won Super Bowl MVP. And it's so funny because Desmond Howard, he basically did like nothing in his NFL career as a wide receiver, but he was an unbelievable returner. He had like 300 return yards in the Super Bowl against the Patriots and won MVP based on returning. So the other path for a wide receiver, and I guess that would be Mecole Hardman for the Chiefs. And I'm not sure. I guess it is Scotty Miller who returns. Yeah. So the only, I think that and again, I don't think Hardman
Pringle too, I think sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think Hardman will do it. Like if Tyreek Hill was returning punts, I think it would be like another avenue for him to win, because if he were to get a punt return TD, then like that's just that doesn't affect the quarterback. Thing is, like, yeah, theoretically a wide receiver could also win from a special teams play like that, but I don't think Mecole Hardman or Scotty Miller will do enough offensively to warrant it, even if they have a great touchdown like that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's just, I mean, if you're actually betting this, I think Mahomes and just hope that team wins, or just bet one of the quarterbacks and not bet the spread. I think that's the best way to bet the MVP odds. But if you're trying to have some fun, and if you're trying to feel some frisky nature, and when Antonio Brown goes for 200 yards and he doesn't win the MVP, and Brady's 280-yard game gets the MVP, you'll just know that I'll be sitting here very sad. But yeah, that's all I got for MVPs. That's all I've got overall, unless you want to just get into the best bets that we have. I've got 3 best bets in terms of the ones that I feel most confident in, I guess we can say. You have anything else on MVP? You want to go into that?
Yeah, I don't have anything else on MVP. Like you said, I'm probably just going to end up betting Mahomes, and I'll bet that instead of actually betting either the line or like either the spread or the money line. So
sounds good. Yeah, we can get into best bets. So basically, there's no certain number here, but it's just some of these bets, props, anything from the Super Bowl that you feel pretty confident in for one reason or another. You probably already have stated it, but I'll give my 3. So my favorite best bets are Watkins over 36.5. I like him in everything this week. Props, DFS, whatever you can find. Clyde Edwards-Helaire over 15.5 receiving yards. The juice on that's minus 124. The Watkins one is only 106. That's overall just a really good bet. And then the third one was close between some Tampa Bay guys. Scotty Miller, like I said, under 20.5. It was very close to that because I think he only sees at most 2 targets, probably only 1 target in this game. But he's targeted downfield, so he could get there. But Leonard Fournette's my third, and I know we're against on this one. I have him under 48.5 yards at minus 118. So Fournette's under rushing yards, Clyde Edwards-Helaire over receiving, and Sammy Watkins over receiving are my 3 quote-unquote best bets. Put your mortgage on it. Don't put your mortgage on it. I'm not a financial advisor.
Yeah, so like you said, we disagree on Fournette rushing yards. I'm definitely betting the over on that. That being said, I will go into, I think that, and people might have missed this. If you're still in the stream right now, this was at the very, very beginning. So I want to mention it again. I'll mention instead of going with my best bets, I'll go with my favorite bets. And the first TD props, I love my strategy here. So basically, if you weren't here at the beginning, I'll just go over it real quick again. So I think that the Chiefs often, I mean, it's not that I think they often start out slow. I would not be surprised at all to see the Bucs come out first with a touchdown. And as a result, I like Leonard Fournette to score the first touchdown at 10.5 to 1, so plus 1050, and then Tom Brady to score the first touchdown, rushing obviously, at 35 to 1. And my strategy there is, if the Bucs get to the 1 yard line, they could possibly give it to Brady to sneak. He's basically like the best quarterback sneaker of all time, has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. If they get to the 1 yard line, I mean, it's a Super Bowl. They're not going to be like worried about his health. Like you put Tom Brady, you have Tom Brady sneak the 1 yard touchdown. And if it's not Brady, then I think it'll be Fournette, because like we spoke about earlier, I think Fournette is going to be the guy in this game. So I'm going to bet both of them to score the first touchdown and hope that the Bucs score a rushing touchdown first, and it's not Ronald Jones.
There you go. I like that. Yeah. So are you good to stay on and take a couple questions? There's a couple questions in the chat. We can pull them up. All right, cool. So we had one question that I actually thought was pretty interesting. So this one right here, we'll get to all these. Some of these are kind of ridiculous, but they're funny either way, so we'll get to them. But where was the question about? Here we go. So Isaac, I hope Isaac's still here. If not, how you doing? He says, Isaac Silver says, can you talk about the over-unders for each half? Yeah, I can give you a general strategy on this. So at least what I'm seeing on DraftKings is they don't change. The over-unders are 26.5 or 27.5 for each half. It's cut in half. But in the second half, you're going to be, for most part in these games, both these coaches, right? We just saw Tom Brady and Arians pull their special teams off and throw a touchdown at the end of the half. All season long, Andy Reid with a backup quarterback goes for it in the playoffs on 4th down in their first game. But all season long, they've been aggressive. In the second half, you're going to be a lot more aggressive, especially once time is running out and you just limited possessions. So in the second half, I don't have any bets on this, but I would lean to look towards the second half overs more so than the first half overs. It's just more so because aggressive nature all throughout the game. Yes, they might be aggressive, but they're not going to as much, or at least want to pull the trigger as much on a 4th and 8 on their second drive of the game from midfield as they will in the fourth quarter on that. And again, when they're going for that, having an extra possession on offense or an extra play on offense is usually going to lean more towards an over and more towards upside. So that's just my stance on the first and second half overs. I would lean more towards the first half over. Doesn't mean I like the under or the second half over. Doesn't mean I like the under in the first half. It's just not really a bet. So second half overs is where, just in general, a strategy, especially in the Super Bowl when everything's on the line, being more aggressive. You saw it last year with the Chiefs having to play from behind and just throwing nonstop. It's going to lead to more points. So any stance on that?
Yeah, I don't have a strong, I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head. I don't have a strong stance other than what you said on the over under for each half. Yeah, not really.
All right, cool. Let me see. So some people just asking where to bet. Yeah, DraftKings, FanDuel, PointsBet, all these other sites. Monkey Knife Fight's a sponsor for prop bets. We got a We Are. Shout out Penn State, Kevin Reeder. I don't know if you know who that is, but yeah, shout out him. And then so over 2.5 rushing yards for Le'Veon Bell. I assume you're related to Mr. Tyler. Maybe not.
Yeah, he's my brother. Yeah.
So Le'Veon Bell I have for 0.6 fantasy points, but that factors in receiving and rushing yards. So it's basically a no bet for me because that means I have him projected for 3 rushing yards. But I guess technically I have him at the over, but if it's at minus 170, it's not something I'll bet.
Yeah, if it comes down to like minus 140 or minus 130, sure. Minus 170, there's no way I would bet it. But like you said, it is the Super Bowl. It's the first time Le'Veon Bell is in a Super Bowl, and I think
the last.
As a Jets fan, I will admit that I was one that I thought that he was just being misused. It's clear that he was really just washed up. And I mean, look, it's sad. Obviously he was great. And I think that it is probably, he probably only has a couple more years left that'll float around the league. Who knows where? And I think that Andy Reid will make sure he gets him in for a play or two and probably give him a carry or two. So I think I think he's going to hit it. I don't think minus 170 is worth the bet.
Yeah, I agree. And also I think the quote recently came out that said Le'Veon Bell, I just read the headline, so I hope he actually said this, but he went to Kansas City because he wouldn't have to rush the ball a lot or be the full-time back. He just wanted to kind of be a backup. So that doesn't really matter too much for this game, but it's just interesting. So let's see. Will the first score be a touchdown, or will it be a field goal or safety? So I'm gonna say first score touchdown, just because in general, like fantasy, I'm fading in showdowns. I talked about it in the video. You can check it out. Came out today. I'm fading kickers in total. I'm fading all the field goal props because these are two of the more aggressive offenses. You have the game just in general going for fourth downs more often, and I don't think that's baked into what you're seeing right now in the price. Like, these guys aren't going to be kicking field goals on anywhere from like 4th and 4 and below at really probably any points in this game, maybe the early first quarter. So with that said, I'd probably lean more towards a touchdown. We've seen some safeties somewhat recently, a couple of safeties be the first and last scores of the games, but touchdown's the obvious one, or maybe not. Maybe it's not the favorite. Maybe it is field goal, but I'll go with a touchdown on my end.
Yeah, so I think, I would go with touchdown as well. I will guarantee you, in terms of, if we're talking aggressiveness here, I'll guarantee you that Andy Reid will not be, or Bruce Arians, neither will be kicking a field goal on, 4th and goal with 2 minutes left in the game. So
right. Yeah, 100%. All right, what do you got for the Gatorade color for the end of the game? Yeah, so these Gatorade props, is there like an actual, I assume based on like popularity, like one, like red is the favorite or something based on popularity? So let's up.
Here are the lines. I have it up right now on DraftKings.
All right.
Orange is the favorite at plus 125.
Interesting.
Red at plus 200. Yellow/green/lime plus 300. Clear/water plus 350. I'll guarantee you it's not going to be that.
How the fuck are these not leaked? Like, how is it not leaked? Like, how does one player not text their friend or something like these have to get leaked on game day?
Blue is plus 700. That seems kind of absurd. I guess like they have the Gatorade bath plan, and then purple's plus 800. They're like, all right, we're not gonna like stain them with blue or purple. So like, well, yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like I don't know what it like usually is. Is it usually orange? Is that why it's the favorite, or do more people bet orange?
That's the thing. I have no idea. I don't know if last year was orange and it's the Chiefs back in it again. So they think maybe if the Chiefs win and it was orange last year, that would be my guess. My guess would be like last year was orange. I don't know for sure. Somebody probably knows in the chat, but I'm assuming last year it was orange and Andy Reid got covered in orange and people are like, all right, the Chiefs are going to use orange again. That's what Andy Reid likes to drink and Patrick Mahomes likes to drink. And if they win, that's a better chance. So somebody said team colors. That's why, because it's team colors. I don't know. We got one more on that. So yeah, I have no bet on it. I would take whichever one's the highest odds that makes sense just to get more money on it. But that's going to be, it's going to be an interesting prop because people are going to be, I assume, drinking it during the game. I don't know if there'll be a camera on it, but like at halftime when half the people in America are like wasted or tipsy and they're just like, yeah, we got to get more bets on this. Oh, let's bet the Gatorade color. Like, you would assume that's going to be spiking even more at that time. So if you're going to bet it, I would wait to see what those numbers look like. But here we go. Last year was orange. So that's what your brother said, or you said he's your brother, right, Tyler?
Yeah.
All right. So last question, then we'll bounce. Tom Brady, 2.5 rushing yards. I'm going to say no on this one. I have him for like 1.7, which doesn't mean much, but only because there's always the downside of them winning and then him losing 2 to 3 yards on kneel down. So I'll say no on that one. What do you say, sir?
I'm going to say no because I think if he's positive in rushing yards, it's because he ran in the 1-yard touchdown and won me my first touchdown bet, hopefully. And other than that, I think, the possibility of kneel downs would be brutal if, let's say, he was at 3 rushing yards or like, and just like lost one on a kneel down. So no, I'm not touching that.
Sounds good. Alrighty, I think we Gucci here. I appreciate everybody tuning into the live stream and on the recording version. We'll put this up on the podcast version. So thank you. Like, subscribe, do all of those things on the YouTube video. And also, if you're watching right now or listening on the podcast, you want to leave a subscribe, that's great. And if you want to leave a review before the Super Bowl starts on Sunday, if you leave a review on there and you screenshot it to me, send it to me in email, send it to me on Twitter, Super Draft, a fantasy sports platform, is going to give away 20 tickets for free to their entry with a lot of dollar riskies, 5 to 6 figures to first place in some of their contests. They're going to give 20 tickets away. Right now, only like 25 people have put in for that contest, so there's still, a pretty damn decent chance that you'll get a ticket. All you got to do is screenshot it. Takes 30 seconds as I'm talking. You can leave the review, 5 stars on the Apple Store or Stitcher, depending on your device. And just screenshot it to me. Send it to me on Twitter at SalVetcherDFS. That's all I got. Thank you, Dylan, at SportsBird on sports_bird, bird spelled BURD on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for joining us today, Dylan. Enjoy the Super Bowl, sir, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I love talking about props, so it was great.
All right, thanks everybody. Best of luck. Enjoy the Super Bowl. For the rest of the content for this week, I'll be live on Friday, depending on when you're watching this, at 4 p.m. for NBA. We'll have some NBA content on Saturday, and then I will be live twice on Sunday. Maybe Dylan will hop back on, but I'll be live on Sunday talking DFS, around noon to 1. And then around 2:30, I'm going to come on and just do a hangout with some of my buddies. We'll be taking questions from the chat, talking Super Bowl props, see if Dylan wants to get in on that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you all in the next one.